Welcome to the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. This podcast is dedicated to helping book lovers discover new authors. Like all the best bookshops, this podcast is filled with all kinds of books and all kinds of authors. So tune in, browse around, find a new author, and discover a new favorite book at the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. I'm Stacey Horan, author, book lover, and host of the Bookshop at the End of the Internet. This is episode number 247. For more information about this or any of our episodes, go to my website, staceyhoran.com. If you enjoy the podcast, leave us a review, like us on social media, and share us with your friends, family, and fellow readers. In today's episode of The Bookshop at the End of the Internet, I'm chatting with author Veeda Bybee about her new cookbook, A Few of My Favorite Things, Recipes Inspired by Family-Friendly Musicals. Once upon a time, Veeda Bybee was a food blogger, but the blog became too much work with family and other commitments, so she gave it up. This cookbook marks a return to writing about food and cooking, and she admits that it is a dream come true. During the pandemic, Veeda and her family began enjoying Family Musical Fridays, during which they watched a musical together, and Veeda prepared a recipe mentioned in the movie or inspired by the relevant time period or setting. By doing this, she found she was able to give her kids a good reason to try new foods. Family Musical Fridays were a big hit with her family, and they inspired her to create a cookbook featuring her family's favorite recipes and musicals. In this episode, I'll chat with Veeda about her writing journey, how she organized the cookbook following the structure of a musical, and how this cookbook differs from the other books she published this year, as well as a few other things. Coming up. Veeda Bybee, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Stacey.
I thought what we could do today is talk about your new book. It's a cookbook titled A Few of My Favorite Things, Recipes Inspired by Family-Friendly Musicals. So tell us a little bit about this book and what inspired you to write it.
Yes, this cookbook is just a dream come true. I primarily work as an author, mostly for children's books. So I have lots of my publishing professional experience in writing in fiction. Well, actually, I've written nonfiction as well. But once upon a time, I had a food blog, and I did have aspirations to do a cookbook, and I love food, but that was just so much work, and so I ended up dropping that. But it's interesting how things come full circle in your life. So during the pandemic, we were all just shut in and thinking of things to do. And Hamilton was premiering on Disney Plus, and it was like the event because anything that we could do together as a family inside the house was just golden. So we made it a goal to watch Hamilton. We've actually never seen it before. However, I had, and I still have them, but they were like middle schooler kids when Hamilton first came out, and they were now in high school. And we've had that soundtrack playing in our house for years. Like I've heard it from, front to end, but I've never seen it in the production, on stage or like on film. And so having that experience, watch it with them, it was mind blowing and opened up this experience of like, I wonder if this could be a good goal for us to watch more musicals. And I decided that we're going to do this. We're going to spend the next year watching a musical every weekend. And we called them Family Musical Fridays. We sometimes would do it on Saturdays, but it was just this really fun thing where it gave us something to look forward to at the end of the week, where like I feel like every day during that time was just like Blur's Day. It all just kind of went together. Like Monday was like Thursday, And so I would spend time thinking of what musical to watch, what recipe to cook from the musical. We'd pick recipes either like mentioned in the musicals or maybe from that time period. And that became just a really fun thing to do collaboratively together. And so how this became a cookbook was that I was talking with a publisher, and they really wanted to work with me, and I was excited to work with them too. And they mentioned, like, we really like food. If you happen to have any recipes we could add to the end of maybe one of your novels, we could do that. And I mentioned, well, I actually, I love food too. We actually spent this whole, past year doing recipes for musicals, and they're like, why don't you pitch us that? And so I did, and that's how it came to be. It was unexpected, but a really great opportunity.
Let's talk about some of these, and I have it here. So, and the names of these are great. Let me see. I'm looking for, oh, spoonful of sugar, strawberry drop scones. And we've got Bob Cratchit's smooth mashed potatoes and pink lady lemonade. That's awesome. Von Trapp schnitzel with noodles. And of course, Violet's blueberry hand pies. So, full and fair disclosure, I did bake the chocolate hobnobs.
Oh, okay. Have you had
Yes,
hobnobs before?
I have. We had lived in
Okay.
England for a while, and they were
Yeah.
one of my favorites over there. So when I saw the recipe, I immediately started baking it. And yes, my husband has now asked when we're going to have more. So
Oh, I love that. Thank you for
yes,
sharing that with me.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
um, yeah, we spent, my husband had an internship years ago, and so we spent 2 months in England, and hobnobs were the most amazing thing. I've never, they were just, English names are so, for me, they're very cute, So hobnobs, they called like, nibbly oats, and that was a really fun cookie to create.
Right, right. So for people who have maybe never had a hobnob, describe what it is. And I'm curious, was this a recipe you just created yourself, or did you like borrow bits and pieces from others and land upon like the perfect mix that you and your family liked?
Yeah, so hobnobs they're primarily an oat biscuit or cookie, biscuit's the English word, and it's very thin and they're a crunchy cookie. And so they come in different varieties. You can just have them as just the oat cookie itself, and they're a circular shape. We like ours with chocolate because I don't know, chocolate's always a winner.
It makes things better.
Yes. And so for this recipe, we make the oat cookie, and then we'll dip or spread chocolate on the top of that cookie. And when I was thinking about this recipe, it's I was thinking of other inspiration, and I did seek other inspirations, but it is primarily, I went through many rounds of recipe testing, and I came upon this version for us, and I really like it too. So thank you. I'm so glad you know what a hobnob is, Stacey.
I
That's
do. I
amazing.
do. Big fan. So let's talk about there are a lot of things I want to talk about. I think first let's talk about process
Okay.
for this because process for writing a cookbook might be slightly different from say writing a romance or thriller or any other sort of book. There's certainly research involved, and I want to talk about the research, how you decide upon recipes and how you decided upon the musicals and all that stuff in a bit. But let's talk about the actual process. So walk us through. Let's assume you have selected a recipe and a musical, and you've got it all tied together, and you understand what the goal is. Maybe how does it come about? How much trial and error? Who do you get to test? I mean, how many rounds do you go through? And I imagine it's difficult to actually write the recipe. Anybody who's tried to write it, it's difficult. It's like writing directions. You have to be very specific and yet not overwhelm people with detail.
Well, thank you for even having that insight. It is very difficult, which is why I did the food blog for a couple of years, and I decided this was just too much work. I think for me, I love how you have a process question. So it shows to me, because I know you have a lot of authors on here, and you have those kind of questions, and I love that because I love to know how other people do things. So but it was different than my regular writing, but at the same time, it wasn't. Like there's many drafts I had to do. And I'm someone who I do outline. Like I don't have a huge, I plot, but I don't have a structure where I break every single thing down, but I do have to follow when I'm writing a fiction story, a chapter by chapter outline. I think it helps me organize my thoughts and not get too sidetracked. So I did the same thing for the cookbook too, where I had to come up with the formula first of how to organize a cookbook. And so that was like maybe one of the first things, yes, picking the musicals and the recipes too, but in terms of like how am I going to structure this cookbook, because I feel like there's a narrative arc in this too,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
just like other cookbooks. Are you familiar with a chef? Her name is Dory Greenspan. She
Mm-hmm.
is my favorite baker, and I could read her cookbook, and I have just like at night as I'm reading a novel. I just love her voice. And she writes in the head note like a little bit of a story, but she's just so friendly and approachable. And I feel that I wanted to have that too. I wanted to have this approachable voice in the cookbook as well. So luckily, I've had some experience before, but it was work kind of fine tuning that and making things, you know, that way. So when I was breaking it down, I decided, instead of just doing just breakfast, lunch, and dinner, how can I make that a musical thing? So I broke it up into musical acts. So like breakfast is like, the inner or there's an intermission for one of the acts, and breakfast is like I forgot what I called it. Let me look that up really quick. But I think it was like the overture. And so that's what it's, I wrote here the French word for opening. The overture is an introduction to the musical, usually a melody of the various tunes that will be part of the production or the prep work. And so I have the first section of like, what kind of tools you need. So that was kind of fun, like when it all fit that way. And so like the opening number was breakfast. Cause you start off a musical with like, what's your big opening number? So I use that for that one. And then, for each recipe, knowing which ones would be good for the musical, but also many of the recipes in the book overlap with each other. So you can use the same recipe for Mary Poppins and My Fair Lady, because they're both British. And maybe you can use the chicken cutlet for the Von Trapp schnitzel noodles for another thing too. Like the chicken parmesan too. So it's interchangeable. So I wanted to make it where you could have several different variations of things too. I feel like it's approachable for a pretty beginning cook to someone more experienced too. So, cooking is one of those things where it can feel so intimidating, and I don't want anyone to think like, if they wanted to make a musical moment if they wanted to do this, like they don't have to make a whole meal for the musical. Just making one recipe is enough where it creates a memory, like 'cause they're sharing just one food and the show together. And I think that will be enough to create a lasting memory with your family or friends or whoever you want to watch that with too.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think that's important because you're right. There are a number of recipes in there that are very simple, straightforward, not terribly complicated, with things that people have in their kitchen already, most likely, or with very little effort to acquire the ingredients necessary. And then there are others that are more ambitious that I'm sure are definitely worth giving a try.
Yes.
So it's nice to see you can gain confidence on the things that seem very straightforward and easy to do and work your way up to the really fancy things.
Yeah, like even the introduction. So for the banana bread, we use cardamom, and it's just like it's so good. It has this like the different spice in it. So if they're not familiar with that, have an opportunity to try that and just say, oh, what this could do for other recipes or for your taste buds. It's just kind of a fun little introduction, maybe to something new too.
Mm-hmm. Have you found, say, your kids or friends or family are like, you know what I did? I added X to this recipe, or we should try this tonight, or whatever. Do you find that it inspires others in this way?
Yeah, so I had someone online do which I loved. She did a video reel of her making the Hawaiian mac salad. And in the head note, I mentioned, you can also add in tuna fish or, other vegetables if you want to, like celery and things. And she did, and she loved it. And she said she's never made mac salad before, and she just really liked the recipe, and it was great for her. And that made me feel like, oh, wow, she actually did the extra additions, which I've actually never done. I've never put in the tuna, but I know people do when they make that variation of mac salad. But
Right.
so I just love seeing that reel and her doing that.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Good. And who tested the
Oh, yes.
recipes for you? I mean, I assume your family was happy to volunteer.
Yes, they did. And just like fiction writing, I do have people that like, beta readers or alpha readers, that kind of thing. And so, yes, I had several people. I asked like my sisters, some really close friends, people I know that like to cook.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really fun to get their input. And they did give me great feedback. So it's just like working with like a friend who's beta reading your story. They're like, you want people who are cheerleaders, like, this is really good. And you want people who are also like, this is really good, but this didn't work. And so I realized like, oh, I didn't give that instruction so clear, or maybe I forgot I forgot a step, because I think with writing too, like, you have that story's already in your head. This recipe's in my head, and I think, oh yeah, that's obviously there. And then sometimes you forget it. So it's really good to have other people involved too.
Let's talk about picking the recipes and the musicals, because I mean, my my first question when I was looking through it is, well, which came first? Did the musicals come first and then you paired recipes with it, or did you have favorite recipes and went in search of like which musicals could I use these with, or was it like a mix of all of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. The musicals came first,
Hmm.
but on the same hand, these are some of my favorite recipes, so the title is a few of my favorite things. And so it's like a double thing where I'm using the title of, The Sound of Music, the inspiration from that. But some of these recipes are really ones we've that they're just passed down from like my mother-in-law or ones we've made earlier this week. We're on summer break for school, and my son made the toad in the hole, it's like the frog prince toad in the hole, and he was using it from the cookbook, and I just love that. Like I love that because we make that, but had the cookbook open on the counter and was just using it to make his breakfast, and that was really fun to see. And so like there are some recipes, like for instance that one, it's the frog prince toad in the hole. They don't actually eat toad in the hole in the frog prince, but I was trying to be a little bit punny, with that. There's actually no frogs that you make for this, and and for those who don't know what this recipe is, it's primarily like a piece of like bread. We use sandwich bread because it's just I think it's easier to cut, and you cut out a little hole in it with a cookie cutter, and you'll pan fry the bread and the egg in the middle. And so when the bread's cooked, there's like the egg is in the middle of the bread, and the kids just love it. So that's just like a fun recipe that we make, and I was able to tie it into the Frog Prince as well too.
And does your family have favorite musicals? I mean, when you were creating this book, where did they register their opinion on you have to include these, or don't forget this one that we watched? Do they have favorites? Do they have input?
Yes. So we watch a musical. When I say we, I primarily mean my husband and my children, because I use it as an opportunity when they put on Scrooge every Christmas Eve. That's just our a Bybee tradition. But I use it at a time to like, I'm just going to go wrap the presents now, or I'm going to get ready for other things because I've never, for many years, never really liked that musical that I just like. I've seen the Christmas Carol so many times, and I've watched it maybe once or twice, but during that time of our yearly musical nights, I knew like, okay, one of our musicals during that Christmas time will have to be Scrooge. And I committed to watching it with the family, and they were so happy to have me there. And that was actually very meaningful to not be the mom who's like ducking out to do something else, but actually spending time sitting with them, having that experience of watching Scrooge. And as I watched it, it was like my own Scroogey heart just turned. And like the music was just so fun, like how he goes from I hate people to like I love life. And it was a really neat experience, and they were just so happy to have me there, and I was happy to be there too. So I knew that had to be in the cookbook, and I, of course, that goes along with some of the British recipes as well. You mentioned the mashed potatoes, so that was a good inclusion.
Yeah. Did you have when you set out to do this goal of Friday night musicals, or Friday musical Fridays, or I forget what family musical Fridays?
Yeah.
Did you have 52 or whatever musicals already picked out? Did you end up having to really go searching through the archives to find musicals that you thought everybody would enjoy that were also family friendly, because you were going to be watching this with, at the time, middle schoolers?
Yeah, I did research like during the week, and I would get input from my kids. I even asked, I have an Instagram, and I had friends and people following along too, and so I asked, what should we watch next? And that was kind of fun as well. I would pick things that were seasonal, ones that had to do with Halloween or Christmas. But sometimes it just happens, the week of when I'm getting inspiration. We watched a musical, and it's not in the cookbook because it wasn't one we really liked, but I've never seen Cats, and so we watched that one, and it was fun to watch. But I didn't include it in the cookbook. But it's like we went to some different shows that were like they were okay, but they didn't make the recipe list per se.
Yeah.
But it was yeah, it was really fun to have something to like. I was obviously still working, but to have something that I could put my energy to and look forward to. I would research and think, okay, what are we going to watch this week, and kind of figure out recipes, because some of the musicals I just wasn't familiar with, or if I've never seen it before, I didn't know as well if what recipes were included. So I did have to look through lyrics, or look through, I think I was like deep diving to see like 1 month we spent watching a bunch of High School Musical because that didn't come in the cookbook as well, but we watched a lot of that. I've never seen that before, but my middle schooler, she just was a big fan, and there was High School Musical the series coming out at the same time too, and so that was a fun thing to do with her. And I think I made a recipe. It was for like a tuna noodle casserole, but it was actually in maybe one of the later ones, but I didn't know, so we made it for the first one. So there's like things like that that didn't line up perfectly, but it was still so much fun.
Yeah. Now, are your kids cooking fans? Do they enjoy that? You said your son was using the recipe book. Did they get into it too, or was that left to you?
They would help me cook. And so like that same son, like he's really good at making the banana bread, but they're not like I wish they were more, in the kitchen more, but maybe it's because I just cook too much, and so maybe they're just relying on me
It
like,
may be out
oh,
of
mom,
proportion.
yeah, mom will do it. But they do appreciate food. And so that same kid, he's 14 now, and honestly, I think for maybe the first 9 years of his life, he did not want to eat any vegetables. He was so against anything green. And I don't know if it's because of this project per se, but I've seen his taste buds evolve. And so now he will eat salads, which it shows me, like, it just shocks me because he was like, so against anything that had to do with like a plant. Um, but he was much more open to things, as you know. I think that probably helps, when you are interacting with the kids more and doing things more, even if he's not making his own, well, he'll make his own salads, but I'll also make the dressing. But even if he's not doing it 100% on his own, I think just the act of being there in the kitchen and being there with them, it does open their eyes and give them an opportunity to like, well, maybe I'll try that. And I'm amazed to see him change. I've changed my taste buds over the years too. So
Right, right. Well, and I mean, that project and then creating this cookbook, it's sort of an adventure, actually.
yeah,
So I can see how when it's an adventure and when there's a goal and there's a challenge, I think maybe you're generally more open to trying things than if it's just your everyday normal dinners on the table kind of thing.
yeah, and it gets in like the why, like why are we trying this new food? And there's a theme.
Mm-hmm.
It's from this thing. I think that helps, like having like the invitation to try something, but why we're trying it too. So I'm learning that as a parent.
I want to talk about the actual breaking down of the writing the recipes, because as you mentioned, it was good to get the beta reader input.
Mm.
How quickly did you adapt to writing recipes that were easy to follow? I mean, was it off the bat, you kind of, having done the food blog, you sort of knew like a good formula, or did it take a while to kind of get that rhythm where you knew you were including enough detail in enough steps that people could follow without thinking, okay, there's 42 steps here. I'm
Yeah.
definitely not doing this.
Well, I also have an editor, and that was helpful too. At first, when I was the first draft I sent out to him, I listed everything like in paragraph, like, step one, step two, and he just kind of took that out, which I like that actually, because it's just a regular paragraph and you can read it. And also like fiction writing, it is a lot of just revision and editing. So the first draft, I just wanted to get the recipes just out, like they weren't even, I mean, they were pretty decent. I've cooked them a few times, but then when I was revising them, I would also cook again and say, okay, this is, this maybe doesn't need so much vanilla or something like that. So even though like this nonfiction project was different than my fiction writing, it is also the same too. And then so for me, I mostly write, like I mentioned, for kids. And so the projects I have they're a little bit smaller because kids' books, they're just not as, the length. And I have a background on journalism. And so I can write really good short, but writing a big project just intimidates me. And so I had to approach the cookbook the same way. Okay, I'm not writing a whole cookbook in like a week. If I can just take a section or just take a few recipes, and that's my goal, then I can, knock those things out, and that I can progress towards a bigger project. And as I was doing that, I found like, oh, I do the same thing with my novels too, just working one chapter at a time, one scene at a time, and then it's less daunting. I can get very, very overwhelmed. So some people really like the challenge of like, I have this big, huge thing. I'm like, no, it feels too big. I'm never going to finish that. But
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of your other writing, because as you mentioned, you've written other stuff mostly for kids. Can you tell listeners what are some of the other projects that you have out? Because I want to, in a moment, get to what the plans are for the future. But let's talk about what you've written up until this point.
Yes, some of my first works were some chapter books, and they were historical fiction. One's called Lily and the Great Quake, and it's about a girl who survives the 1906 or 8 earthquake in San Francisco, and she is able to go through with her brother to survive. And it's with the series called Girls Survived. It's kind of like the I Survived books, and I based it actually on. It's not written about a girl named about this girl, but I did find a girl named Lily who did escape Chinatown, during that time, and so that was really fun for me to get into the Asian American history and write her story. One of my other projects that came out a few years ago too, it's called Shining a Light, celebrating 40 Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders who changed the world, and that's a nonfiction biography collection about 40 individuals who or just have made such meaningful contributions. And with that, so I wrote the biography, and then the illustrator, her name is Victor Nye, and she did the illustrations, and it's just so beautiful. I'm just so proud of that project. I love her work. She has this really great illustrative quality where it looks like the person's realistic, but she just adds so much depth to each portrait. So I just love that project so much. I'm also a co-writer for a series called Team Awkward. This was really fun. It came out this year. My friend Joy McCullough and we are team writing this book. The first one came out in January. The next one actually comes out in a couple of weeks, and then that's book two. And it's about four girls who have like a very embarrassing first day of middle school, and so they all just like flee into a hidden locker room only they can see, and so it becomes like their safe space. And they call themselves Team Awkward. So each of the book is about each of the girls. We had the first one out in January, second out in June, and we're working on those two. And then I have a middle grade novel coming out in October as well. So this has been a very busy publishing year for me,
Yes.
like more than I've ever had, and I'm just very grateful for it. But so in October, I have a book called The Invincible List of Lonnie Lee, and this comes out in October. It's a middle grade book about a girl who uses Chinese mythology and their story of these invincible brothers to make a list to give herself more courage. And she's able to do some really brave things like face this band concert she's going to for in London, but also enter in the Cooper's Hills cheese race in honor of her brother. So it's just that was a really fun one to do. So I'm excited for that to come out too.
So you've been busy.
Yes.
So in addition to maybe, I don't know, possibly a small vacation for yourself, what do you have planned going forward? Are there works in progress, things you mentioned you're working on the rest of the Team Awkward series,
Mm-hmm.
but do you have plans? Do you have a list of things you want to do? Are there more cookbooks planned? Do you plan what comes next? Or is it kind of the biggest, brightest, shiniest, loudest idea that you work on next?
Yeah, I feel so grateful. I've been writing for a really long time, and I know not everybody, we all have such different trajectories. That's the great thing. Like, I like to see how other people do it, but their way of publishing will be so different than mine. I mean, I knew that, but seeing that is really unique. So this year has been the busiest, and with publishing, things are just a couple years out, so I do have to plan ahead. So I'm working on getting another project out with a publisher, but I do have Team Awkward Book 4 that is due. My first draft is due this summer, so I'm working on that. And then I did get to go on vacation though, Stacey. So my family and I we did go overseas to London. So I just got back like last week. So that was actually kind of fun because all the recipes I cooked, like the kids are like, "Oh, this is what a full English breakfast is," because we had it at the hotel, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So luckily I did do that, but yeah, I just having to think what's the next idea and writing that. So right now I have to gear up to write and I've been working on this first draft for Team Awkward Book 4, and then and a potential thing too down the line.
Okay. More cookbooks, do you think, or
Oh,
is one enough?
as of now, I mean, I'll never say no. I'll never say no. It really and right now it's been a little bit of distance, so it's a possibility, but it was so hard. It was so hard, because I took all the photos as well.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I did the recipes first, and then I would do the photos. So that was it worked a different part of my brain, and it was good. But I'll just say we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So what was the learning curve on taking photos? Was that something you had done before? I mean, are you a photographer? Is that something you enjoyed, or was this a brand new skill you had to develop for this?
Um, I wouldn't say like, so I have no photography experience. I think I took like an online class once from someone, and so I know like the rules of three but I honestly just use they're all on my phone and I just use my own eye for styling. So it was it was very difficult, but at the same time also really fun. I like to have that experience to do that. Having social media helps because you're taking photos of things for Instagram or when I had that food blog, and so that did help. I mean, I had that experience taking things then, but that was something that I wasn't very confident in at first. But I had to kind of fake it and be like, okay, I can do this. I can do this, and I did. So
Good, good. Well, that's there you go. Good lesson right there. Good advice. Fake it till you make it. Right? Isn't that how it goes?
yeah, because I don't think
convince yourself you can do it and just go
yeah,
do
I
it.
don't think any of us are really experts on anything until we actually are doing it. And so it's
Even after doing it for a while.
Yes, I know. Yeah. I'm thinking of I went to a writing conference recently and we're sitting there and I'm just thinking like I know nothing about writing, even though I've written so much, but I feel like I just you keep learning, and that's the great thing about writing too. We can always I love how you can write till you're ever old, and you just get better.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Well, if people want to learn more about you, the books that you have out, look for new releases, that sort of thing, where should they go to find you and that information?
Yes, I have a website. It's veedabybee.com. I'm mostly so social media wise. I'm mostly on Instagram. I do have like a Facebook and maybe like a X formerly known as Twitter account, but I never am on that one anymore. I always think about how to up my social game, but I just kind of primarily stick to Instagram. So that's where it is there.
Good. And if people want to purchase a copy of A Few of My Favorite Things or any of your other books, where should they go to buy them?
They can buy them wherever books are sold, and so online. Bookshop has a list for independent booksellers that have it too. The publisher is Shadow Mountain. You can off a Desert Book. You can buy it off that website too. But yeah, you can get it online pretty easily.
Good.
And
good.
Barnes and Noble too. So yeah, online.
Right. Well, I'm now hungry to say because I've been looking at this cookbook and remembering the hobnobs. So I have cooking to do, but I want to thank you for joining me today for the podcast and wish you luck with A Few of My Favorite Things and your works in progress. We'll look forward to those. So congratulations on everything you've accomplished so far. Best of luck with the rest of your writing journey.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank you.
The Bookshop at the End of the Internet is a podcast dedicated to helping book lovers discover new authors. Like any good bookshop, this podcast features a wide variety of books by the equally varied and interesting authors who felt compelled to write them. This podcast gives you a chance to meet these wonderful writers and discover your next must-read book. Listen to the authors describe their books and tell you their stories in their own words. My interviews feature books from all genres and authors from all walks of life, including those who are indie published as well as those published by small presses and large publishing houses. Looking for unique, not so easy to find books for yourself, a friend, or a book club? Tune into this podcast and find your newest favorite author or maybe a soon-to-be bestseller. This podcast, like all the best bookshops, is filled with all kinds of books and all kinds of authors. Tune in, browse around, find a new author, and discover a new favorite book. You never know what treasures you might find in the Bookshop at the End of the Internet.